Welcome to part one of a four-part series called Being on Stage Alone, but Never by Yourself. I wanted to interview several community members of the Big Talk membership community so you could get to know them a little bit and understand why having a community of speakers is so important for your speaking platform. Hello, everyone. I am Tricia Brouk, the executive producer of Speakers Who Dare, curator of the Speaker Salon, founder of the Big Talk Academy, and the Big Talk membership community. I am so excited to introduce you to this incredible human being, man, speaker, and dear friend of mine, the incredible Andrew Bennett.
Hi,
Andrew,
everybody.
welcome. I want everybody to stick around for this interview because you're going to have an opportunity to ask Andrew questions, and you're going to want to pick his brain because he is a wealth of knowledge. It's going to be incredible. And if you're watching, comment, ask questions, share with people who you think they might find some value with this interview. And if you're watching the replay, make sure you tell us you're watching the replay. I'm looking over here because I've got two computers going. I just want you to be aware that we're going to have questions happening over here, and I'm going to bring them to Andrew. So that's going to be amazing. Let me start by saying that Andrew Bennett is a speaker, consultant, coach, magician, and two-time TEDx presenter, specializing in leadership, organizational culture, and personal development. He is on a mission to revitalize the human spirit and has worked with over 120 organizations, including Google, Microsoft, and Habitat for Humanity. Andrew, I'm so excited to have you here. This is not the first time we've had the privilege of speaking with each other in an interview format, and it's always such a pleasure. Share with our audience anything that I missed about you, please.
Well, we have to mention Philip and Winston.
Yes, we do.
They are our 2-year-old, we still call them kittens, but they're Instagram celebrities, about 41,000 followers, and they're just all about love and kindness and fun.
They are two of my favorite furry babies. I have two as well, so we share the love of our kittens. And I have to say, they are always around when we're rehearsing, when we're working on things. So I've had the pleasure of seeing their sweetness on your neck, biting your hair, jumping on things. So I'm so glad. We will definitely put in the comments where you can follow the kitties.
Yes, I will. Yeah.
All right. Amazing. So let's talk a little bit first about who you are serving currently, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of in a transition that's been going on for a while, actually. I've done corporate work really for, my goodness, my business just celebrated 23 years. And so it's been all primarily corporate, or organizations. So like you mentioned, Habitat for Humanity, they're not corporate, but anywhere there's groups of people that work together. So I've focused on leadership and organizational culture. And, I think a year ago when you and I met, when I found you, I was looking for a TEDx coach, and someone had just met you and they said, I should give you a call. And I gave you a call and we went down that journey together. And I think it really marked a shift for me because I realized that I wanted to take the work that I'd been doing for all those years, 23 in my own business, and then 5 years before that, working for a consulting firm. So all those years inside organizations, and I wanted to take what I'd been learning and offer it to the general public, whatever the world, people who might not benefit because they're not in a large organization or they're not in an organization that I've worked with. And so my work is not specifically about business. It's really about human life, and it's really about the spirit and living a meaningful life, a joyful life. And it's, that's been in the context of organizations, but I wanted to take that to people in general. So I'm in transition with that. And then, the virus crisis happened. And so that's been another variable that's been introduced into the equation. So it's a time of transition for me.
How are you currently thinking of this time being shelter at home, shelter in place with the global pandemic and opportunity and creativity and innovation? How are you absorbing all of that?
Well, at first, I had a hard time. I started going down the rat hole. I got somewhat depressed and felt adrift, felt lost. Uh, and then one day, my wife Jennifer just reminded me of my purpose, and she always calls me the hope guy. I don't know if people will be able to see. Where are we here? I have over on my bookshelf. You can see it. It
Yeah.
it says hope over on the bookshelf, and that's been a really, really big, important factor in my life in navigating a lot of loss. The having hope, and so when she reminded me of my purpose, and I think this is really important for all of us to try and lift our vision up a little bit from everything that's going on day to day right now, and as intense as it is, to lift our heads up a little bit and say, wait a minute, what's my purpose? And so once I did that, and I thought, my purpose is about revitalizing the spirit, and it's about helping people feel hopeful and optimistic and joyful and all the good things that life has available for us. And so when I did that, it started to show me the way. And so I'm putting together a 4-part series of virtual workshops, online workshops that are free. They'll be free to do just that. And we're calling it the Magic of Hope. And so that's helped me see. So it's really been about, okay, my purpose is about hope, and my purpose is about revitalizing the spirit. So how do I let that guide me in this time? And that's been really a 180-degree shift.
It's such a great reminder, Andrew, to go back to why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
why you speak about what you speak about, whether it's corporate or civilians or TEDx. Your message is always the same, and it is really hope, and it's really about how to, like you said, revitalize the human spirit.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm so glad that you're reminding us that when we become lost, whether it's in a global pandemic or in just life, going back to that purpose and reminding ourselves why our very important point of view and message matters is how we keep the story moving.
Yeah.
And I know that you have spoken on many stages. You are a seasoned speaker. You've spoken professionally for over 30 years, maybe
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
And you've delivered 2 TEDx talks. And by sharing your message and your very vulnerable story, you have absolutely saved lives.
Hmm.
And it's so important to be reminded that you're changing lives and you are saving lives when you share your big message. So I'm so glad to hear that you're putting this series together and giving people an opportunity to work with you. It's going to be incredible.
And I hope everyone hears what you're saying, because it's true for everyone that speaks to a group. I know you believe this to the top and bottom of your heart, because that's the way you articulate your mission, is helping people bring those important messages to the world. Um, and we don't know the ripple that goes out. I hear from people who didn't even see me or hear me, but someone told them about me, or someone recommended a video. And so even when you don't hear from people, you're impacting people out there. And that's why it's so important, regardless of the reaction or non-reaction that you get. You just don't know. You got to put it out there. If it's meaningful to you, it's going to be meaningful and helpful to someone.
Absolutely. And Susan Eckstein, one of the speakers in the membership, she shared in the group that she was very nervous about speaking out and putting herself out there, because there's so much of it right now. And we shared with her that the one person that's meant to hear her will. And so I encourage everyone who's watching, if you have a message, if you have something you need to say that's serving and supporting people right now in need, do it. They need to hear from you.
Yes. Now more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's unpack your speaking career a little bit. I know all about you because we've had the pleasure of working together, but I don't know if my audience does. So talk a little bit about where you started and how you got to where you are now, Andrew.
I have to try and keep this short. But the start was really when I was a kid, because I got into magic when I was 7 years old. So I did my first magic show when I was 7 years old. I got up in front of my first audience when I was 7 years old. And I've done magic my whole life. So I've done thousands of performances in front of audiences. So magic. And then in after college, I went to work for Ross Perot. Ross Perot found out that I did magic, and he told me I needed to use magic in business presentations. And so that was about 35 years ago. And that's when I started integrating magic with a message. And right near the end of my time with Ross Perot, they had we had a speaking competition in the company. And I'd been doing training inside the company by that time. I'd been conducting training. And so this speaking competition, and the rules were that every single person in the company, 72,000 people, had to participate in this. And it was to identify the person that could articulate the EDS message the best. So I said to myself, and it was a $5,000 prize. This was back in 1991. And I said, all right, if I can win this contest and someone's going to hand me a check for $5,000 to speak, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go pursue my speaking career. And I won. And so that was kind of the first like paid keynote speech that I ever did. And so then I went off and went to work for a consulting firm and a training firm and started doing keynote speeches for them, and then started my own company. And so that's kind of the big trajectory.
That's a pretty big win for way back then.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I remember the corporate newsletter when they were still putting out, this is before the internet, so they printed the newsletter, and I remember there was a picture of me. I know I don't have it anymore, but there was a picture of me. They were handing me the Publishers Clearinghouse jumbo check and on stage, and you know, I had this look on my face like somebody was handing me my newborn child.
That's awesome. I love that. We have some people live with us, Andrew. We've got Jazz, Brandy, Marisa, and Jazz
our friends.
has a question, I know.
Yeah.
Jazz wants to know, were you nervous about integrating magic into your business?
You know, I was not. Part of it was because I'd done magic for so long. I felt very confident in my skills as a magician. And, you know, honestly, I think the other part of it was the arrogance of being young. I was pretty arrogant back then. I've been humbled by life since then. So I've come down to size since then. But back then, I just thought I could do anything. And Ross also, I could write a book about how supportive Ross Perot was of his people. But he just made everyone think they could conquer the world. And so now it's interesting because the first time I used magic in a business presentation was about as high stakes as it gets, because it was for the General Motors board of directors. And it was to convince them to make a very big multi-million-dollar decision. And Ross put a 23-year-old kid doing a magic trick in front of them.
I love that.
And the story of that is for another time. But the reaction was unbelievable. While I was doing it, the reaction was not good. And for anyone who's a speaker, really be careful not to tell yourself stories about what people are thinking in the audience. Because if that were the case, when I did this GM presentation, the body language was, I mean, I was saying to myself in my head, okay, this is the end. This is the end of your career. They hate you. They hate this. This is awful. You're gonna fail. But then I got to that moment, the magic moment, and it was pandemonium. The room just erupted. And it was like little kids at a birthday party. And I looked back, and Ross was kind of leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, and he was just nodding at me with a big smile on his face.
Aw.
So I really wasn't nervous. I get more nervous now than I used to.
Amazing.
I still
I
get
love
very, very nervous.
I love what you're saying about not creating those stories about what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because we can only control what's happening for us, not for other people.
Yeah.
And being conscious, but not projecting what you think is happening, because you don't know what's happening.
I was doing a presentation in a government agency a couple years ago, and there was a guy, it was a fairly small group, and there was a guy with his arms crossed, frowning. And I just thought, man, this guy doesn't want to be here. And when I finished, he was the first one to come up, and he said, boy, that was fascinating what you said about, and I don't remember what it was, but he said, tell me more about that. And, it was just one more of those examples where, don't do that to yourself. Just trust that, trust in your message, put it out there, love your audience, love their spirits, and let that message land right where it's supposed to land.
Such great advice. You've clearly had a very substantial and robust speaking career as a professional speaker. What drew you to the Big Talk membership community, Andrew?
Well, that started when I met you, when we were working together for my TEDx talk. I've been speaking forever, but I know that I still just have so much to learn. I want to become a better speaker. I still think there's so much. I am excited about the journey of who I can become and how I can get better at making it possible for what I have to say to help people. So I think I do have a sense of humility about my own abilities. But when you first talked to me about it, my reaction was, well, this might be for people who are not really experienced or beginners. I don't know how much I'll be able to get out of it. And so you and I talked, and you told me about your vision for the group, and so I joined, and it's been such a great decision because it's such a great community of people, and I've gotten so much value out of it. And interestingly enough, the one thing that I was worried about, which is, and that does sound arrogant, actually, like, these are beginners, and but it turns out that that's actually one of the biggest things that I like about it, is that you have diversity. You've got diversity in all the ways that we would think about diversity, men and women and different backgrounds. You've also got this diversity of experience. And so people that have not been in the speaking business for a long time, that ask questions that, because they don't know, bring up things that I've not heard of before. I mean, they bring a fresh perspective to it. And there's just so much that I've learned from people in this group. And Tricia attracts people who are wholehearted people. And so you've got this group of people that are loving and kind and supportive. And it's just this wonderful, safe place. So I kind of came trusting you. And then what I found out was I've got a speaking family here, and we're growing as a family, growing to know each other, and learning how and where to support each other. It's a really, and particularly this point in time where we're all separated, to have a community to go to where you look forward to it and you're happy, and it's just wonderful.
And in the comments, Jazz has said, we've learned so much from you, Andrew, and that there's room for everyone at all levels. It's profound. And I want to comment on that, Jazz, because the reality is we are all connected because we all have a story. So the diversity is absolutely critical for me. That's the kind of community I create. But what we have in common is that we all have a story that needs to be told in order to help other people.
Boy, that's really true. I love there are opportunities in the community to practice, and everything from just sharing an idea, like, okay, gang, does this idea have legs? From that just simple thing to all the way through to we've had members who have delivered presentations. And so to hear those ideas, and yeah, I mean, that's another really enriching part of it. Yeah.
That's so great. So great. Andrew, what are two things that have stood out most for you by being part of the community?
Well, the people, I mean, and that's I think the greatest thing about it. And there's this really rich vault of resources that you have given to us. Everything from guidelines for applying for a TEDx talk, to recorded interviews that you've done. There's guest speakers. So, I mean, all of those are resources. And I think another thing that I love about it is that it's dynamic. There's another community that I'm participating in right now where clearly the leaders have more interest in scaling than they do in really serving. And so I think when you're scaling, you're trying to figure out how to automate and do as much hands off as you can. And the Big Talk community, I mean, last week you convened a special session of us live all together. We weren't scheduled for that session. You did it because of this time that we're in, and it would be really great for us to be together and support one another. And so to have that kind of dynamic community that's alive and not just an automated thing is another great thing. So, and our Facebook community, we have the Facebook page where we all are able to share and support one another. And that's a daily, I check in on that daily. What's everybody up to? What are the wins? And to hear the things that people are doing is very inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm always surprised and humbled by is the vulnerability that everyone is willing to share with the group, whether it's in the Facebook group or whether it's in those group calls. You all come to the table completely vulnerable because, again, that is how you share your message authentically, and everyone is willing to do it. And I'm so conscious and responsible of it. And that's really one of the things that I'm always touched by. Brandy says, I've loved getting to know everyone in the community. I've learned so much and connected with so many like-minded people. Jazz watched the guidelines repeatedly. It's great to have resources readily available. Kate's here. Resources and dynamic is right. Amazing. Do you all have some questions for Andrew? I know you have access to him in the group, but if you want to ask him anything today, feel free to just pop those in the comments and I will ask him. What do you imagine this community doing in terms of supporting your entire speaking platform, Andrew?
Wow. Well, I want to share more about my own challenges, I think, with adjusting in these times with the group. And I think that gosh, that treasure chest of people who are so smart and caring, I think being able to have a conversation about that would be very enriching for all of us. So I think my other speaker friends and magician friends, we're all trying to figure out where are we going right now? Everything's changed. So how do we go through this time? How do we make a living? How do we also do what we believe we're here to do, the messages we're here to share? How do we navigate this whitewater? And I know that the community would have a very rich conversation about that. So I think right now that's the value for me.
And I will make that happen.
That's
I'll get a
great.
call scheduled.
That's great.
We have some questions. Marisa is asking about how is the process that you use to determine the message you choose? What's the process you use to determine the message you choose?
Well, I always work with my clients. No two talks are the same for me. I don't have a canned talk. I do have a structure, though, and I call it my transformation framework. And it's emerged from all those years of working with clients. It's been this continual process of refining what is it that enables people to grow and change. And so it's become a model. And so that's the structure for my talks. And so when I talk to clients, I find out what are your goals, what are the things that are keeping you up at night right now, what about your people, tell me about their lives. I interview usually 3 people from my client organization to find out about their world. And I always want a variety of people who are new, people who have been there a long time, different departments. So when I interview those people, I'm able to do a little bit of diagnosis. That's where my consulting, I think, comes in handy, where I can do a little diagnosis of here's what I think the most valuable message for them is going to be. So then I look at my model and I say, okay, in this talk, we're going to focus on the power of authenticity or the power of words. And that allows me to then kind of customize the message for that group. So that's how I approach them.
It's so
Even
valuable.
when we did our TEDx talk, it was filtered through the model because my talk was about practical magic, and that's appear, disappear, and restore. And that's at the core of my model. So that model is really, that's my body of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's great for our viewers to know that you've got a body of work or an umbrella that all the talks filter out of. And so the heart-centered, authentic message and mission is usually the same. And how you deliver it is based on who you're delivering it to.
That's right. Yeah.
Brandy says, Andrew, as a seasoned speaker, what advice do you have for those that desire to transition from the corporate world to speaking full time? Anything to consider? Things you wish you would have known?
Well, when I made the transition, I said, when I left working for Ross, I said, I'm going to go 5 years. I'm going to work for a consulting firm, learn the ropes, and then I'm going to go on my own. And after 4.5 years, the partners of the firm had a falling out, and there was all kinds of financial trouble in the firm. And so pretty much everybody got laid off. And so I got laid off.
Mm.
I don't know if that would have happened if I would have followed through with my 5-year plan, because I was pretty comfortable. But I remember I was told that I no longer had a job on March 31st in 1997. And the next day, April 1st, April Fool's Day, I applied for incorporation in the state of Washington. I was in Seattle at the time. So I kind of, but I looked up and kind of laughed with God and said, thank you. Thank you for doing that, because I don't know if I would have had the courage to do it. And so that's how I did it. I do think that model of having a foundation, a job, and building your skills and building your speaking world as well, like the relationships, the network, getting connected into the world of speaking, that can all happen while you're working. But I think the skill building piece of it is kind of obvious in pursuing that, but what's less obvious is getting connected into the speaking world, whether you join the National Speakers Association or a community like the Big Talk community. I mean, this is where I would rather go. I'm not putting down National Speakers Association at all, because they are great and they've helped a lot of people. I just like the more intimate. The Big Talk community is more intimate, and it's attracted kind of those heart-centered people. That's a particular kind of speaker. Yeah. National Speakers Association, you'll find a lot of people, all kinds of speakers who are speaking about scientific things, but Big Talk community is really heart-centered speakers. So, I think, Brandy, you're in the right place for sure. Yeah.
One final question, Andrew. Jazz wants to know what the membership community solves for you. What problem?
Tribe. Yeah. I mean, I realized that I was missing that feeling of family, of people who I felt aligned with in terms of values and purpose. I realized that I was missing that a couple years ago. I have a tribe of magicians that I put together a couple of years ago, and that's wonderful. But I didn't feel that sense anywhere else in any kind of speaking community. And so for me, it's having my tribe.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure, a treat, a delight. You're one of my favorite people in the entire world.
You are too. Love spending time with you, and thanks for having this.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. I hope that you will start sharing your powerful story today, and be sure to subscribe and click on that notification bell so that you get access to my newest and latest videos. And I really appreciate that you are here and will always respond to the comments. Big love.